let's get the pulse of the people through, of course, that channel you were mentioning earlier. Social media, very, very important. Let's check out Sprinklr with our data presenter, Paolo Del Rosario. Paolo, what have you got for us over in SOCMED?
Ano ba yung sprinkler na naman yan? Sprinkler sa amin is for gardening.
Well, kasi yung sa gardening may E yun eh. Ito walang E. Sprinkler without the E. Sprinkler just with an R. So let me explain just what Sprinkler is. So Sprinkler is how we collate data through different social media platforms. We look at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We even check out Reddit, Quora, WordPress, and of course, we also look at different news and blog sites. Now, when you look at this, of course, syempre, we cannot say definitely that the higher engagement necessarily means more votes for each person. But we take a look here who has the most engagement in the last 7 days. If you notice, there is a big spike last Saturday when all the meeting day advances happened. Of course, Facebook and Twitter were abuzz with a lot of the news. 1.5 million interactions there, as well as 900, almost a million over on Twitter. VP Leni Robredo with a lot of positive mentions. We actually have an algorithm just to see whether or not things are positive or negative. The things being said about the candidates are positive and negative. Of course, Leni Robredo right over here, as you can see, has a lot of positive mentions coming from Facebook and on Twitter. On the other end of the spectrum, though, former Senator Bongbong Marcos has a more than 50% negative mentions from these social media platforms, which is interesting to note considering that a lot of it actually happened during his meeting de avance last Saturday as well. Now, this is the overall reach of the presidentiables. As you can see here, a lot of it actually still coming from the news cycle, from a lot of reactions from different articles, from different videos coming from news bodies. And you see that Twitter and Facebook not necessarily the highest amount, produces the highest amount of content or highest amount of mentions for these candidates. As we can see here, the hashtag cloud, Makati is pink, the hashtag used by Leni supporters during her meeting de avance, had a lot of mentions. In fact, the most last Saturday. And of course, you can see the strength of the Kakamping campaign coming from the Leni Robredo camp, really showing us that they really dominated social media at that point. Of course, again, we cannot emphasize it enough. Social media, the amount of mentions don't necessarily lead to the same amount of votes as well. But we have a lot to look at here, and we're going to have the ability to look at this all throughout the election day and even the next day, just to figure out where the pulse of social media is at. Danny.
Paolo, I have a question, no? Because theoretically, internet, social media should be the great equalizer, diba? The Filipinos have one of the highest penetration rates of Facebook. We have more than 2 SIM cards per person here in the Philippines. Is that reflected in Sprinkler? The fact that, you know, it's inclusive, the fact that it's all social classes here searching these names, looking at these people, or is there still some sort of bias for those that have better access?
Well, they're all in terms of the bias on who has the access. Of course, you're going to have to take a look at the internet access. How much of the population do have the internet access? Which social classes actually have the ability to reach these platforms? And of course, who puts a lot of stake into how much is being said over on social media. We even can now look at things like what people care about. There are a lot of people worried about the religious vote right now based on the last 7 days. And that does not necessarily mean that that is something that is going to affect this election in particular. And of course, when you mention the access and the amount of SIM cards that people can have to access social media, it does also tell us that just because there are, for example, we mentioned it a while ago, that VP Leni Robredo was very much in the lead in terms of engagement here, 2.6 million engagement. That doesn't necessarily mean that 2.6 million people are talking about VP Leni over on social media. And of course, that also doesn't mean that for former Senator Bongbong Marcos, the 2.1 million mentions there doesn't necessarily mean that there are 2.1 million people talking about him over on social media as well.
But what does engagement mean in this definition?
Engagements are the likes, the retweets, the mentions, and the comments.
All of these taken
all of these
into
things
account.
put in together. And of course,
Whether bad or good, ha?
whether bad or good.
Okay.
There's something, Paolo, I noticed in that presentation. Gas prices, zero engagement.
Yes.
Saan?
Actually, it says over
It makes
here.
you
That's
wonder
right.
about that. Sumurrender na ba ang Pilipino? Or are
Walang shares and
are
likes.
they living in denial? It's like, I don't want to even go there.
That's
Actually,
my main issue, ha?
That is a very good point. If you look at the election issues based on social media, again, religious vote being up top, the West Philippine Sea
Anti-corruption,
dispute as
hindi
well,
rin.
and you see here at the bottom, the gas prices, war on drugs, political reforms are at the very bottom. You're gonna actually see a contrast in what would come up in the Pulse Asia survey in terms of what the voters do care about. So yes, it is a bit different. It is very different actually what you can see on social media from time to time compared to Pulse Asia. And of course,
Would it be safe to say, based on that analysis, that our engagements in social media has nothing to do with our social problems? It's become more of a Paulo hates Cito, Cito hates Paulo.
well, sir, first of all, I do not hate you. But when you look at all of this,
Conditioned ka na.
there is, you are right in the sense that, of course, the concerns of people on social media might be different from the people on the ground. Again, this has to be in connection with the access of internet, of social media. For example, those without access to internet and social media probably do not care about the things that the people with internet do have concerns about. Again, this is also very fluid, considering that it is very reactive to the current news. We saw a while ago that the engagement when it comes to the election issues and the religious vote is near the top. Remember, very recently, there was the discussion on the block voting from religious organizations. So that has
That's
really
the last 7
fueled
days, eh. Oo.
from the last 7 days. So that has really fueled the discussions. Those defending, those attacking the vote block policies and all of that. So this is not reflective of what people necessarily do care about, but it does show us what currently is being
pulse.
discussed at the moment. Again, last 7 days, religious voting, fake news being a big issue. And of course, interesting to note also in the last 7 days, West Philippine Sea dispute also being discussed as well, Cito.